Alright, so in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what is a creative agency or content agency, whatever you want to call it, and whether it's the right business model for you to start this year. My name is Vince, and in the past, I've built my own creative agency to 6 figures a year, and I've helped well over a dozen people at this point build their own creative or content agencies as well and scale to 6 figures a year or even multi 6 figures a year with it. So I know a few things about this industry, and let's get started with the definition of what is a content agency in the first place. Now, the truth is there isn't really a very specific definition around this. I've seen people put, a bunch of different kind of agencies around this umbrella of creative agency or content agency or editing agency. And so I would personally consider any type of online agency that is like creative or content agency. So whether it be short form video content production, whether it be long form videos, for example, for YouTube, or even ad creatives for e-commerce brands that they can run as ads, or UGC content for TikTok, for example, and Instagram. I would consider all of these, as long as they are kind of in this online content production space, a creative or a content agency. Now, you might be wondering what kind of agency I personally got started with around 4 years ago at this point, and it was a YouTube agency. So basically what I was doing for clients, and we still run this business as well with my partner Greg, is we basically do the video editing for YouTubers, right? We do the thumbnails, we do the video ideation, and even the posting. So basically everything is taken care of for them. All they have to do is record. And mainly the type of businesses we work with are in the business space, or at least in some sort of space where they are selling their own products and services. We also work with clients, for example, in the advertising space, who would have their own agency. We also work with people in the info product space who have their own coaching products or courses, whatever the case might be, or even, for example, a fitness influencer who has their own app that they are selling to their audience. So in general, we work with people who have some way of monetizing aside from just the ads on their channel alone, because it's very hard to make enough money from just AdSense. And yeah, so that's the space I got started in. But like I said, there's also a bunch of other ways that you can go about starting in this content agency space. Now, the way I got my first ever client was basically I just messaged 50 to 100 people who I was already watching on YouTube, and I told them look, I'm a huge fan of your show, I'm a huge fan of your channel, I would love to make some short form clips for you for Instagram. And basically one of them said yes. He was a guy named Omar Elatar who runs a big podcast called The Passionate Few, and he's still a good friend of mine. We've actually went out to Romania to interview Andrew Tate a few weeks ago, which was a pretty wild experience. But back to the point, he was my first ever client, and at first I was working for him for free, right? But then after a month, I told him all right, if you want me to continue making these videos for you, you have to pay some money. And I believe I was charging him around $500 per month at that time, which to me back then, that was huge. I was just, end of 15, just turned 16 basically. And so that was my first ever client. And at first I was actually just making short form content for him. And then from that, I transitioned into making more long form YouTube videos as well, not only for him, but also a bunch of other clients, that I got after that. So that's how I got my first ever client. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to do free work to get started, but that's how I did it. And it seems to work pretty well if you build out a bit of a portfolio by doing some free work for credible people. Now, you need to make sure though that the work is still really good so that someone would actually pay for it as well. Now, you might be wondering how I went from just being a freelancer and editing videos all day long outside of school to actually being a creative agency owner and having some more leverage on my time. And it was a pretty simple and straightforward process, to be honest. And it wasn't even something super intentional. I just basically got to a point where I was freelance video editing while still in high school, and I was making around 4,000 to 5,000 a month, just again working crazy hours. I was waking up at 4 a.m, working before school, went to school, then got back, did my little homework a little bit, and then worked until 11 p.m. to midnight. And so it just got to that point where I realized like, okay, this is not really sustainable. I'm not really growing because I'm out of hours, right? Like there's only so much hours I can work and I can sell my time for. So the natural first thing was, all right, let me find someone who can also help me out with the editing and do it for less than what I charge my clients. And so that's what I did. I hired my first editor and then built it up slowly from there. Now, when it comes to the content agency or creative agency business model, you might be wondering about a couple of things. First of all, what are the margins like? Well, in the beginning, when you are just starting out, the margins can be very high. Obviously, if you are the one who's delivering the service, it can be close to 100% aside from payment processing fees, but then you're not really running an agency, let's be honest. And when it comes to just outsourcing the editing, so the only employees you have are just editors at that point, you don't really have, any appointment setters, any sales guys, any managers. At that point, you can have still like a 70% gross margin. And again, it can be very profitable still, because if you have 70% margins or 65% margins, you make 10,000 in revenue, you can get around 6,500 to 7,000 profit, right? And that is very achievable. But the thing is, once you start scaling up, so you get to around 30K a month and beyond, you are going to eventually need to hire some managers who oversee all the editors, so you don't have to do it yourself manually. You are going to get some, virtual assistants, maybe some lead scrapers, maybe even some appointment setters, right? Like whatever way you get your clients, and that's all going to eat into your margin. So once a content or creative agency is like properly scaled up to 50, 100K a month and so on, your margins are more likely going to be in the 50 to 60% ratio if you have done things correctly and you have a healthy business. Now, I've seen some people screw up their pricing and have basically like 10 to 20% margins while running an online editing agency. And the thing is, like, yes, if you have offices and all of this, stuff, all of this expenses, then yeah, it is very possible that you will be in the 10 to 20% margin range. But if you're running an online one and it's a lean agency, the whole point of it is to be profitable. So you shouldn't be at 10% margins once you are at 50K, because you're making 5 grand a month. At that point, you might as well just not run a business. So at first you should aim to have like 70% margins when just starting out, and then even once scaled up, you should still have 50 to 60%. Now, talking about scalability, going from 0 to 10K a month is obviously a big jump because you don't have the skill sets necessarily yet or the character traits that you need to run that type of business. So it's going to be a bit of a difficult phase maybe at first. So I definitely recommend you to get some mentors or someone who can help you out in that process. Now, after that, you will need a lot more skills as an entrepreneur to manage this business and keep everything together and keep all the clients happy, keep the delivery good, and also onboard enough clients every month to keep the company growing. So this business model can definitely scale to 100K per month and even beyond that, but you will need to be a skilled entrepreneur. But regardless, that's the case with any type of business model. Once you start playing in the bigger leagues, so to say, it will get tougher, of course. Now, just as a disclaimer, we haven't done that yet. We are currently in the 40 to 50K per month range. So I don't want to, have you think that we've done hundreds of thousands a month yet, because we are not there just yet. Now, if this is something you're thinking about and you're very serious about building an agency like this, again, getting the proper guidance and mentorship can be super crucial. So if you want to have a chance to work with us, you can click the first link in the description below and book a call to talk with my team to see if you would be a good fit. Anyways, let's talk about the pros and cons of the content or creative agency model for a second. Number one, the fact that it is creative work. There's a lot of people out there who may be into photography, videography, video editing, right? All of this creative stuff. And so for you, starting a Facebook advertising agency, for example, like more of a traditional SMMA, might not be the right move, because if you have zero interest in looking at numbers all day long and being behind a screen and the ad manager and doing all of that stuff and talking about things like ROAS and this and that, right? Like, it might not be natural to you. You might not enjoy it. So in that case, you might be a lot more fulfilled running more of a creative based agency like a content agency. Another big pro is that it is definitely very high demand right now, right? It's a trending service, which means that it's easier to sell and there's a lot of demand for it. Now, on the other hand, the traditional SMMA model of just running Facebook ads for local businesses has been very overdone in my opinion, and it's getting harder and harder to sell because business owners have been burnt multiple times. Now, I'm not saying that running a content agency is easy by any means, or that there is zero competition there, because that's simply not the case. But still, I think in terms of demand versus supply, it's still a lot better than more of the traditional type of agencies. Another pro is that it's relatively easy to outsource. There's a great supply of high quality video editors who would be happy to work with you and deliver the service on your behalf. Another pro is that if you've done everything correctly, so you've put together a grand slam offer, you are following a proven sales process, and you have great delivery as well, it's relatively easy to sell these content services for, 1K, 2K, 3K a month. And as I've already said, it is a lot less saturated, in my opinion, than traditional type of marketing services. Now, let's talk about the cons as well, because I don't want to give you only the positives. You are more likely going to get lower retainers than traditional direct marketing services like Facebook ads or, copywriting or even email marketing for big brands. On those spaces, if you're doing it at a very high level, you can demand even 5, 10, 15K per month retainers. And that can also definitely be done in the content space. Like you can definitely charge 5K, 10K per month for your retainers. In fact, I have, many people in our program as well who charge 5K a month, and we've done that as well multiple times, right? But it is slightly more difficult, or I would just say that you need to be like very on top of your game to get someone to pay you 5K a month for content. Versus if you're working with a very big brand, a very large brand, right? And maybe you're doing their email marketing, if you can generate them 200K, 300K in a month just by sending your emails, then it's a lot easier to charge that 5K a month retainer, for example. Either ways, like you need to be doing it at a high level in both cases to retain clients at 5K a month. But I'm just saying, in my opinion, like you really need to know your stuff if you want to be charging those kind of retainers. And another con is that you will, generally speaking, need to have more clients to make, for example, 50K a month revenue than another type of marketing agency. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about for a second is whether I think that this business model is AI proof. I believe that anybody who's asking this question is just most of the time looking for a cop out to not even get started with it because they are scared. Like, oh, is this going to disappear in 3 years because of AI? Like, the thing is, you could make that argument for basically any type of, business or agency. It's just as much the case for a Facebook ad agency, for example, to be irrelevant because of AI in 5 years as it is for a creative agency. But in my opinion, if anything, like good creatives are more important nowadays than knowing how to, do media buying, because the ad creative affects, for example, how well something sells a lot more than the targeting itself, because of how good these algorithms are, for example, in Facebook ads or TikTok ads or whatever the case might be, right? So what you need to do with this AI revolution is get on it, right? Instead of being afraid and thinking like, oh my God, this is going to take my job, life is so bad. Don't have that victim mentality. Instead, educate yourself on AI, all the tools that are coming up, and how you can use them to 10x the content output that your agency can produce for your clients and the results that you can produce for your clients. And that way you can actually not only stay relevant and stay here with your service, but you can also make way more, because all of those people who are not getting on the wave of AI and are just, scared and being in that victim mentality space, they will be wiped out by you, because you can produce way more higher quality content using these AI tools at a cheaper cost. So I hope you found this video insightful. If you want to start a content agency and get some help with it, or you are looking to transition from a freelancer making, let's say 2 to 5K a month to making 10 grand a month plus with this model, then again, check out the first link in the description and see if you would qualify to work with us personally as a client. So again, hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.